Hey, I'm Nick DiMatteo, and welcome to Season 7, Episode 21 of Music is Not a Genre. Do it with me, MxG. Sloppy, but I did it. This is a very, very special episode, and I'll tell you about it in a second. Thank you, as always, for watching and listening. Listeners, go to youtube.com/@musicisnotagenre. You get a video for every episode of this podcast. Watchers, go to nickdimatteo.com/musicisnotagenre if you'd rather not see the visuals, the stunning visuals of this, and just listen. And everyone, go to patreon.com/musicisnotagenre to support this podcast, my band Rec, and everything I do. One more note, I may do it more than just this episode, but yes, I am on a new podcast network, and I am looking for new sponsors. This network has been doing amazing work for me. My numbers have skyrocketed, as I mentioned last week. So if you are looking to advertise something that you think is relatable to my fans and my audience, please contact me in any possible way. Send me a DM or message or whatever it is, and I will work with you. And that's all I'm saying right now, because we've got a very special episode, as I mentioned, for this week to kick off April in a sense. And this is the thing about this. First of all, as I've mentioned possibly, and if you've seen my posts on social, you know this, I've been super, super busy. Things are crazy, and they're going to get crazier throughout the year. So I've been doing my best to keep up this podcast schedule, and my hope is that I can still bring you weekly content in one way or another. But I've had to make some concessions and compromises. I gave you a bonus episode from Patreon a couple of weeks ago, which I hope you enjoyed. There will be more of those to come. I'm doing more interviews, which I love talking to people anyway, but that sort of cuts down on the amount of research and things that I have to do. This is not a full-time job, as you may know. And this is a first. I am bringing on a guest host today to host this topic. And the topic is Meat on Music, a complete history. Why is it called Meat on Music? Because the guest host is I'll say friend of mine. His name is Meat Vegan, and he has told me that he wanted to, host this and talk about music, Meat on Music. He has another show which only select people in the world can see. It's called Meat Talk. I've seen a couple of episodes. The episodes are short. I don't know about this one. He told me that I have no editorial play in what he is about to do. He didn't say it that way, but he basically said stay out of his business or whatever. I don't want to comment too much, because this is his show as far as both of us are concerned. And all I'll say about this presentation is that passion beats precision any day of the week. So please, everyone, in the next few seconds, I'm going to hand it over. Introducing Meat on Music, a complete history, featuring my guest host, Meat Vegan. Hello, this is Meat, and this is Meat on Music. I'm going to ask you to sit down and shut up for the next bit of time as I give you my take on the complete history of music. A little bit about myself first. Can't tell you my full name. Can't tell you where I grew up. Did a lot of things. Can't tell you about them. Spent some time, if you get me, which is where I learned to cook. Food is my life. And if there's one piece of advice I can give you about both food and life, it's don't hold back on the spices, you fucking stunad. Bland shit ain't worth it. We got one go round. You understand me? All right. Later on, I'll talk about one of my favorite recipes, cacio pepe, and the bonus on Patron, or whatever it is another recipe of mine, Meat's Famous Balls. But you got to pay to see that. And I'm talking pay, all right? So, why am I qualified to talk about music. Well, first of all, I said so. So, shut up. Also, it's in my soul, and that's all you need to know. And I have a background in a cappella groups, specifically doing vocal versions of French Impressionist compositions. My group, Rafe Arleo and the Grease Beavers version of Eric Satie's Gymno Payday fucking rocks. And I have accordion experience. Not so much playing it as, let's say, wielding it. So today I'm going to set the record straight about everything. The whole history of music. Whatever you heard, it's wrong, I'm telling you. You got to listen to me. I'd be remiss if I didn't make it right. No disrespect, none intended. All right, let's get into it. We're going into the early history first, because where the fuck else are you going to start? You going to go backwards? Jesus. So music started as nothing. And it stayed that way because it knew what it was good for it. It stayed silent. Then some boneheads got the bright idea to make noise using actual bones and basically nature's trash. And yeah, they talked and grunted and made other sounds, which to me is why their average lifespan was like 30 years. Because they talked. God. Then, like a drug epidemic, or if you're a good businessman, or like crotch rot, it spread amongst the community. Music. People, if you could even call them that back then, they put together word-like sounds with beating things or beating other people. And they called it because they didn't know fucking nothing. They didn't have words yet. And it should have stayed that way. Flash forward a few years, I'm no mathematic, but let's say at least 60 or 70, and people started talking and using words and making instruments that did more than maim. Drums and string stuff using entrails or some shit, all kinds. And development and blah, blah, history and whatever the fuck's generally fucking boring, no disrespect, none taken. And people started writing stuff down. Again, a mistake, but I wasn't there. Nobody asked me. Which brings us to the middle history. Music got popular. The right people were behind it. You know and I know who those right people are. The church wanted a piece of it. Which they want a piece of everything, you know. That's just how they are. I respect that. I gotta respect that. The church, don't get me started. They did some good shit too, though. Like monks singing. That's effective shit. And without religion, we wouldn't have had the great Reverend MC Hammer. So some good shit, you know. They got people out of the house, at least. Brave, considering who might be looking for you. That's all I'm saying. You had people coming from famous, but not obscure. They were more obscure. And then they became famous for writing for the church. Like Pacific Palestrina. Johnny Batch with his 2-part inventions and shit. I looked them up, and there are way more than 2 fucking parts with those inventions. So I don't know what he was talking about. Then music went beyond. It went all the way past the church. And you had guys like Wolfman Jack Mozart, Europe's first DJ. And little known fact, he faked his death in his 30s, no matter what you heard. And he's still alive. Why? Because he's a fucking wolfman. He's immortal. I don't know where he is. We've been looking for him. I got some ideas, but I don't have the resources I used to have because of some, I'm not going to talk about it. And then you had Ludwig van Beetlejuice. He got his name. Why? Because he wore lead wigs, which is probably what made him deaf. And if you listen to his shit, you can totally tell he was deaf. The erotica? Holy shit. It's just confusing to me. I didn't feel any stirrings, if you know what I mean. I don't even know why he called it that. The erotica symphony. And then some lots and lots of self-involved, whiny artists in the 19th century who had to make everything so goddamn dramatic. You know, if you have power, you don't need to be loud. You speak at a normal tone, and people will listen to you. Did they do that? No. You had Robert Schumacher, who was better at making shoes than Leder. You had Robert Wagner, who did opera before he did TV. Little known fact. You have Freddie Chopin, leader of the syndicate. Again, did not die in his 30s. I'm not going to tell you what happened to him. And he wasn't an illness. That's all I'm saying. And then you had Anton Dvorak. It was his divorce that made his music so depressing, by the way. I can't listen to it, to be honest. I've been through enough. I don't need to hear that shit. And then you got all this other kind of stuff going on. I didn't even talk about the Baroque and all that stuff. That's it's not that it's beyond me. Nothing is beyond me. No disrespect, none intended, but fuck you for saying that. Because I heard you. That's not stuff that I necessarily need to talk about, because you can look it up. They got things on the computer you can look at. All right? So I'm skipping to something else. A favorite of mine. The best thing about French Impressionism, and you know I like that, is that it left the stormy drain behind. It made you think, and it made you listen, and it made you stay silent. You had people like Claudio Big Boosie Debussy. You had Maurice Little Mo Ravel. And you had our man Eric Satie. And I'm telling you, you gotta hear Ray Farlio and the Grease Beavers, Jim No Payday. Do 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 do. That's a snippet. I give you that one for free. Give you a little taste. You know what I'm saying? You want more. I know you want more. So then after that, things got even more weird. You had Arnie Schoenberg. He said fuck notes and just started banging on pianos and other shit, and he called it something, and all of a sudden it was something. You had Belly Bartok, who went by his last name only, little known fact, Bartok. That's what he would say every time he went on stage. He started sampling old tunes until he got caught. Had to pay dead Marvin Gaye or something. I know it happens. I don't know. I don't remember all of it. You know what I'm saying. And you had Stravinsky, who started World War I, little known fact, because his Doing Spring Right concert / self-help cult infomercial drove everyone to violence. Now, this is not something I can tell you, but I'm going to tell you that one of my ancestors was there. And man, did that give him ideas. Psychological warfare. It's not the old school anymore. You hearing me? Anyway, that brings us to the modern era. Now, that's what violence does. It brings people into the modern era. This is why there's so many people right now doing this shit. They just want to drag you into the modern era. It's a public service, is what I'm saying. So thank you, Stravinsky. All right? Not Italian, but you got to work with everybody. That's good business, is working with everybody. All right? So, modern era, who should come along to save music from its own ass masturbatory self-destruction? Not white people. That's all I'm going to say. They didn't know what the fuck they were doing by that point. You had the blues and country and folk and jazz and eventually rock and roll, which was also known at the time as listenable shit that people actually like. And that was the original name of all of that shit. You compared to what? Stravinsky, Jesus Christ, and Arnie Schoenberg. I mean, Jesus. You needed something that you could sink your teeth into. Oh, like a good veal scallopine. You know what I'm saying? Don't get me started on food. So anyway, if you're talking 1940s, which I am, and you got nothing to say about it, there's one guy. Sinatra. You knew I was going to say it. Yeah, I'm not above being a cliche. Well, fuck you. All right? No disrespect. None intended, but fuck you. Okay? Now, I'm going to stare into the camera and breathe audibly for you listeners while you think about Old Blue Eyes. Because there's nothing I can say that will make this any better. All right, you done? Did you give the homage? Did you do it? All right, good. Moving on. 1950s. Oh! 1950s. You had Chuck Berry, Licious Berry, father of rock and roll, grandfather of Darryl Strawberry, little known fact, and founder of the Maybelline Cosmetic Company. Man was a genius. You had Elvis Presley, real name Elvis Aaron Costello Stoico. He was from what I can tell, and I didn't know much about him, he's a Southern religious singer who actually had terrible vision. So he had to wear them thick glasses, but he could figure skate like there's no tomorrow. That's right, Elvis Aaron Costello Stoico. You got to look him up. Nobody remembers him, but you got to look him up. And there was actually very little tomorrow for him. Unfortunately, after Colonel Tom Sanders fed him fried chicken until he exploded, like that guy from The Meaning of Life, Monty Python. That's exactly how Elvis died. That's a word for word, scene for scene, food for food. That's how Elvis died. And then you had Little Big Richard. Everybody called him Big, and all the guys knew why his nickname was Big, and good for him and good for the guys. And fuck you for saying otherwise. He invented glam rock and later on became Prince. And then all the doo-wop guys, and I couldn't stop myself from stopping right here and saying that if I didn't mention the doo-wop guys, some of them probably would have come to get me. You know, this is not a paid advertisement. Let's just say this is a way of paying dues. Also, what? Ray Farlio and the Grease Beavers. We're a doo-wop and we're an a cappella band specializing in French Impressionism, but we had our inspiration from all those doo-wop originals from the 1950s. Oh! And though I don't take offense with the word wop in doo-wop, in that context, I can say it. We can say it. You know what I'm saying? We can say wop and Guinea and Dago. You, it depends who you are, all right? That's all I'm saying. When you get to the 1960s, you get the big problems, all right? Everybody thought they were supposed to speak up. The protests. When people have been telling them, my people in particular have been telling them, decade after decade, to what? Stay silent. Stay silent. But did they listen? No. And you can blame two things for that. My cousin Alfie killing JFK. Lee Harvey Oswald killing JFK. And the Beatle brothers. Mm-hmm. And especially the Beatle brothers, they opened the floodgates to people who thought they could put their own words in their own mouths. No disrespect, none taken, but let me do the talking, right? And you, I'm not even going to tell you. You know, stay silent. And you can blame their consigliere, Bob Zimmerman, for inspiring that, but you can blame him for a lot of things, including the latest Wonka movie, I think, but don't quote me on that. I don't really watch movies. But there's no denying that the Beatle brothers had something. Made a good go of it. Few people in the world still remember them to this day. Little known fact. Also, there were four of them. The Fabulous Four. You had Jimmy Beatle, Ricky Beatle, Georgie Beatle, and Johnny Skip Beatle. Skipper. Why? Because to the public, he was the leader of the band with Johnny Skip. To the ladies, it was Jimmy the Face. To the other musicians in the, let's say, musicians organization, quote unquote, and don't quote me, if you know what's good for you, it was Ricky the Sharky. But behind the scenes, and as far as the lads were concerned, the real leader, Georgie the Guru, whose surly attitude and catchphrase, "Don't bother me," let everyone know you didn't cross him. He was so influential that Jimmy and Skip had to keep him in line by telling him, save all your best songs for after we break up. Otherwise, the public's going to find out you're the real leader. In fact, short list of people who crossed Georgie the Guru. Stunad Sutcliffe, Brian Juan Epstein, Brian Jonestown of the Rolling Appropriators, Janis Jalopy, Jim Van Morrison, Jimmy Jam Hendrix, Casper Elliott, and eventually Kurt Cobain. Little known fact. Yep, just a short list of people who crossed Georgie the Guru. The only person more powerful in the organization than Georgie, and I mean the general organization, this musicians organization, quote unquote, and don't quote me if you know what's good for you. The only more powerful person was, of course, Stevie Wonder. Full name, Stephen Ray Charles Feliciano Millsap Bocelli Shearing Healy Wonder. And by 1972, after Georgie Beadle shot his wad, which he did, it happens, Stevie took over and the rest was history. Meaning I'm not going to go over it because you can go and look at the fuck up yourself. History is fucking boring. I'm doing this. Let's just say community service, all right? Other than to say, this day, nobody messes with Stevie. Nobody. All right. Speaking of messes, the 1970s. Geez, the 1970s made the 1960s look like the 1950s. Oh! If you know what I'm saying. Who didn't fuck who is the easier question to answer. Hey, yeah, that's the 1970s. The answer is anyone who was too hopped up on Mickey dust to do anything, let alone do anyone. The greatest musical inspiration of the decade was Richard Nixon. Because fuck that guy and everybody said it. In song after song. But let's go through some famous 1970 artists. Marvin Gaye and So What? He should be proud of that, even if his father wasn't. Sly and the Family Stallone, a personal favorite. Elton Johnson, who didn't just have big glasses. Oh! Billy Joel Gray, whose daughter got arrested, by the way, little known fact, for lewd dancing and then went into witness protection after a very famous nose job. I'm not telling nothing out of school. She's out of it now. All the people who had it, and for her, they're all dead anyway. Davy Ziggy Duke Jones. Led Zeppelin, heavy on the powder, if you know what I mean. And cultural appropriation as well. The Bee Gees, do not. And I made this mistake back when all of them were alive. Do not ask them what BG stands for. There's only 3 people ever found out. And you know what? They're not here anymore. Let's just say BGs and just keep it safe, all right? You had the what, the who, the when, the guess who. I don't even remember which one of them. You had Black Sabbath, all right, whose return to traditional church music started a trend continued by artists like AC/DC INRI, Jewish Priest, Iron Lady, Metallic, Megadeth. Most famous song, Pray to God You Don't Gotta Pay the Vig on that. Corny, and Striper, of course. All religious bands. You had Pink Floyd, parents of the Panther. Also parents of Alicia Moore, Pink. And also proud parents of music you can only enjoy when you're high. Little known fact. I tried it. It didn't work. You had Fleetwood and Mac Eagles, the inventors of snooze rock and group therapy. You had Queen, inventors of Lady Gag. You had Earth, Wind, Fire, Water, Air, Leather, and Vinyl. Kind of did a little bit of everything. You had Bill Carl Withers. So many more. I can't go through all of the 70s because of what a fucking mess it was. We can't forget, though, the women of that decade. I mean, there's women in every decade, and God bless, right? 70s, oh, are they coming up? You had Helen is Ready, and she was ready. You had Carole Kingston Trio, who was a solo act. I don't get it. This is like a Ben Folds thing, probably. Roberta Flack. You had Patti and the Smiths, who went on to a very different career later on in the 80s. You had Joni Mitchell and her brother Chachi. Linda Rhinestone. Corporal Tennille, hey. Man in Blue, I don't even remember. You had Aretha Franklin, Roosevelt Franklin. You had Diana Ross, who, to my eyes, never did dress for less. I'm just saying. I have more respect for her than other people do, it seems. You had Charlie Simon. And, of course, Cher. The icon Cher, right? And his son Bongo, who she would do things with, the duet thing, who then eventually went on to form U2. Later on, the 1970s, everything exploded and it was not our fault. I'm telling you that right now, that it was not our fault. What was left after disco and punk? The war between them was known as the Chic Summer Pistols Clash and was fought by the people of the village against the Ramones. And nobody really won. Nobody wins like that, right? They'd eventually make up, in fact, and they'd invent the 1980s. Little known fact. So let's get to the 1980s.
Okay.
All right. As I
Meat.
As I said, the 1980s.
Meat.
Yeah, what,
Hey,
Nick?
meat.
For God's sake, you better have something good to say, because
We gotta take a break. We gotta take a break.
All right. We gotta take a break. We'll be back in a minute. Hey, thanks for checking out this episode of Music is Not a Genre. If you'd like to learn more about this podcast, if you'd like to learn more about the music I do with my band Rec or any other projects or anything else about me, go to nickdematteo.com. That's Nick, DEMATTEO.com. And everything is there. There's even a link to a merch store where you can get t-shirts and mugs and hats and totes and notebooks and so many other things. I'm always adding new products there. Great way to support the podcast. And finally, go to patreon.com/music is not a genre if you'd really like to show your support. My fans and lovely family there get exclusives and other perks and early releases, and they get to suggest topics for future podcasts as well. Thanks for listening to the mid-roll. Now back to the show. All right, we're back. This is me. And this is Meat Talk, Meat on Music. I hope you've been sitting still and shutting up. We got another half to go. All right? Now, back to the 1980s and no interruptions. Nicholas. In the beginning of that decade, there was a whole new wave or new order of music. I can't remember the name of it or any of the band names, but it was like a mix of punk and disco. All right. Electronic music ruled the day, which so pissed off fans of guitar virtuosity that they fought back by getting together in a bunker to create the shredder to end all shredders. And this group was known as the Satrialmstein Cabal. And this group was known for one thing. The main characteristic is that they never shut up. Yeah. Give me electronic music is all I'm saying. Stars of the decade of the 1980s, of course, the genius auteur Roger Nelson, whose most famous work is the post-nuclear war movie Purple Rain. Maron. Oh, she was big, the actual mother of our Lord, by the way, and that's all I'm saying. Whose song, Get Into the Groove, was originally called Get Your Ass Out of That Chair and Do Something for God's Sakes. Michael Jackson, who turned a severe debilitating condition known as retroambulation into a huge craze, and good for him, because what else did he do, frankly, right? Bruce Spring, who loved America exactly as it was. No disrespect, none intended. U2. Back in Ireland, UK, little known fact, they're originally known as U as well. Friends of mine over at the Tep Talk podcast said that the main jamokes in there they call Bongo, aforementioned, and the Egg, the one on guitar with the jingy jangy, and then there's like two session dudes in the band as well. I feel like, frankly, they're constantly pointing fingers at me. You too. Me too? Who? Who are you talking to? It's just incessant. The Cure, who had shortened their name. Their original name was The Cure for Seasonal Affective Disorder. So they could broaden their lyrics to things like having sex on Fridays, for example. It's very generally what they sang about. And various other bands like The Cure, whose main skill was also gravity-defying hairspray, but who did a kind of rock music that has a very vulgar name, and I'm not fucking saying it because I don't fucking curse. All right. Depeche Mode, one of my favorites. Very religious band. Again, not like Judy Priest or whichever one that was. A case in point, the song Your Own Personal Jesus Fucking Christ. That was a beautiful song. It's really very religious to me. The also very religious Genesis. I mean, it's right there in the name. And the solo careers of the singers, both singers who were actually twin brothers, Phil and Gabriel Peters. Yeah. George Al Michaels and his band Whack. Lionel Train Richmond, I'm pretty sure, who somehow defied Michael Jackson with his retroambulation by doing it on the ceiling. I don't know how the fuck he did that. Well, I kind of know. You know what I mean? But 1980s. Tiny Turner, who had a big comeback in the 1980s, has stirred up a lot of controversy, by the way, by being a successful black woman in the 1980s, or really like at any time, frankly. And also, Tiny Turner was very small. She looked normal on screen. Actually 3 inches tall. Cindy Lauper, who exclusively, her entire career, wrote songs about female masturbation and nothing else. And don't you test me. The Sting, from his band Fuck the Police. MxG. It was my favorite song. There was a What You Need to Break My Heart, co-written, little known fact, by a woman who was very young at the time, known as Tulips, or AKA Dua Lipa. Right. Serious fact check, though. Most people don't know that the 1980s, albeit 1980, 81, 82, 83, it actually started in 1984 when the song Too Late for Goodbyes was released. But that's if you're just using the Julian calendar. No disrespect, not intended. Which, while we know it started in 1984, that year was like a restart for the whole world. There were the fewest annual #1 albums in history, is what Nick told me one time. There's only 5 of them that went to #1 in 1984. The most famous, of course, being Sports by Huey, Dewey, and the Louies. I mean, come on. What an album, you know. I Want a New Drug. That wasn't even on that album. But there was another groundbreaking album that year, not in the top 5, Run DMC by the Beastie Boys. Yeah. Hip-hop was becoming a thing, and you couldn't deny it. With other famous, mega famous artists like LL Cool Cool, J.J. Walker, Naw, N-A-W, I think it's pronounced Aw, Naw, Cacio and Pepe, The Public Enemy, #1. The Body Positive Boys, who were huge in at least 3 ways, and DJ Jazzy Fresh and the Slap Prince. Hip-hop was everywhere, but it wasn't until 1990 that hip-hop was actually respected, let's say. No disrespect, none taken. Due to the efforts of the one and only Rip Van Winkle, better known as Vanilla Ice Hole, whose huge hit, Ice, 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 baby, baby, revolutionized music and was the first time in history a white person ever copied a black person's music. Little known fact. Yeah. Speaking of 1990, the 1990s. Yes. At this point, everybody got sick of everybody else and decided to write songs about it, which is what started the decade. More like in 1991. The Depression was so bad that everyone's hair went from way up to hanging way down, like they've been rained on by grease. And I know from Greece, let me just tell you, you don't want to know what's under this hat. Whole different kind of greaser culture is what I'm saying, right? Oh, the band that kicked off this new fashion trend was one that made their fortune singing songs about personal care products. Let's say personal products, mostly. Nirvana, with the late, great Kurt Cobain. They did a song about deodorant. They did one about tea, lithium, boxes of hearts and trinkets and shit, blooming flowers. You get it. That's all they talked about. It's kind of like those old paintings of fruit in a bowl, but set to music. Yeah. And then the rolling appropriators to Nirvana's Beatle Brothers was Mini Pearl Jamboree, who didn't really go country until like 3 albums in, you know? And somehow their first album was also their 10th album. I don't get it. Not a fan. Another lady group like Mini Pearl Jamboree was Alice in Wonderland's Garden of Sound. It's kind of like two groups who were like, well, what if heavy metal hated itself? And they broke up. They went. It's a mess. It's a complete mess. Just like Seattle. Another child-themed band like Alice in Wonderland's Garden of Sound were the Halloween duo of Scratching Pumpkins and Nin. N-I-N, which I think stood for 9-inch knives. I mean, maybe they were talking about knives. I don't know. I don't know Trent Reznor very well. And my personal favorite, STP, the Racer's Edge. Lead singer, Island's voice. He did sound like he was drinking motor oil. True. But that wasn't the whole 90s. More or less depressing stuff was happening. There was collective conscious hip-hop groups like De La Soul Train and A Tribe Called Questlove. They were like hip-hop hippie, except by people who actually had something to bitch about. That's all I'm saying. Vocal groups such as Kids Off the Old Block, Two Boys and a Men, and Belle Division Boat. They're Poisoned. Oh, honestly, a very motivational song in my, let's say, former line of work. I'll tell you, none of them, though, ever did Eric Satie like Ray Farlio and the Grease Beavers. You got to hear it. No single dropping sometime. You ask me later. They would basically beat the shit out of the sad hair groups who couldn't really get up the interest to fight anyway. So by the mid-90s, all those groups won. Everybody eventually got sick of being sick of everything and needed to think about nothing, which is how you get the rest of the 1990s. You had songs that would talk about nothing, like that song Zig Zigs by the Spice Merchants, and the Woohoo by Blurry, and Pop Ole by Beck Hansen Brothers, and other nonsense type songs such as the entire catalog of Kid Rock. Other fun type stuff too from people like the Blackstreet Boys and Sync, followed soon by 98 Degrees, known in Europe as 36 2/3 degrees, little known fact, and Orgasm Town. I think they had a shorter name. Women, again, and I mention them in every decade, you know, but women in the 1990s, they were kicking ass. They said, finally, stop not listening to us. Like you had Atlantis Morrison. You had Mary Carey. Maron, again, Maron, she just doesn't go away, because why should she? All right, A Ray of Light and all that. You had Celine Dion without the Belmonts for some reason. I don't know what happened to them. You had Doubt with Stephanie Gwen. And pre-start of the 2000s with the twin sisters, Britney and Christina Asparagus Spears. Which, again, here we go. One decade follows another. Don't ask me why. I'm not a mathematic. But that's the 2000s. That's what comes next. So the 2000s was the start of the period when musicians ran out of things to do. So they just started to do stuff. And it was a period when bands were innovating, quote unquote, don't quote me if you know what's good for you, by pretending the previous 20, 30 years didn't happen and just added a "the" to their name so it sounded new, and did stuff that, you know, already happened. Basically, bands like that with the black and white striped keys, the Backstrokes, the I Didn't Killers, I'm telling you, the Moron 5, give me my nickel back. Apostles Creed, open for Moron probably. The Fallout Bros and Turk 182. I mean, I think they were kind of the same band. I don't know. I think they just put on different wigs or something like that. Maybe a lead wig. Goldplay. Oh, which formed after Bongo and the Egg were replaced by singer Steve Martin and his piano. And, of course, those were all bands that, again, they took from stuff that already happened and they did the same thing to it, such as the entire musical output of Kid Rock. Plus, hip-hop. Oh, you know hip-hop. It started a long time before this, but by this time in the 2000s, it finally said to everyone, stop playing, all right? Electronic, yeah, you can come with us. Pop, but the rest of you ain't saying nothing new. You ain't saying nothing new. So go fuck yourselves, move over, give us the seat in the house that we already built. You had people, big hip-hop stars, all right? Not that you didn't have them before. You know, you had Bigger and Six Pack, was it a two-pack? I can't remember. I don't buy that. In the 90s, but the 2000s, I mean, you had people like 50 Cent Piece, JP, Kenny West, Smithy Elliott. A lot of their stuff was both depressing and really psychedelic and weird, and they were the ones who were innovating. Eminem, Mars, William Perry Farrell, and whoa, they nearly took over, and they have never. Oh no, I know what this is. I know what this is. There was a guy named Whoa Nelly. Man. Oh, what a guy. I don't know. I didn't know him. Somebody told me to say. I got paid to say that. But hip-hop took over, never gave it back up. But they had to fight it out with country music, which keeps coming up. It keeps trying to take over the country and never gets more than half. But it keeps coming. That said, you got to give it to country in the 2000s because it blew up. Not in the, no, you're just metaphoric. With people like Keith Urban Cowboy, Brad Paisley Park, Carrie Underbaked, Miranda Lamborghini, Tug McGraw, Kanye Chesney, now known just as Cheesy, James Taylor Swift, Little Flat Rascals, the Chicks with Dicks, and Without It. They had the Dixie in the beginning, and then they got rid of the Dixie later on, and then Lady A-Hole. So many. The other big, and then Big Little Rich, I believe it was. It was from, I don't know, not the same guy, though, surprisingly. The other big thing about the 2000s was this is pretty much the last time musicians made any money. Correct. The letters, by the way, okay, I'm going to say this and take it in the spirit it was given. If not, fuck you. No disrespect, not intended. The letters C and D could stand for many things, most of which I'm not going to talk about. But it's no coincidence that they also stand for both a savings account and the Little Music records, because both of those make money, and both of those disappeared sometime in the 2000s. Yeah. Because a little back before the 2000s, there was some upstart crime families, and I'm allowed to say that, the Napsterios and the Khazars, and they tried to, Robin Hood music, and they got caught like Gotti, but they weren't the worst, because along comes the 2010s, the 2010s, and the little families, they got took over by way bigger and more ruthless syndicates. And this is my public service announcement right now. See, people think organized crime died out when Gotti got. But nah, it just moved to Sweden. And it renamed itself Spotify for the 5 families. Called that also because the only way most artists on there make money is to walk up to strangers on the street and say, Spotify. And that's how they base their business model. We all got robbed. Look, I mean, I'm not a musician, but the musicians all got robbed. And I have so much respect for that. Spotify and Apple and all the smartphone internet dons, they said to the record companies and artists, give us money to steal the music and then we'll give it to the peons almost for free, and we'll keep the money. Had I figured that out soon, I wouldn't have spent time anywhere, is all I'm saying. So by the middle of the decade, middle of the 2010s, CDs of both kinds, they were gone. And they were gone. Everything was gone. Even the letters weren't even in the alphabet anymore. And I would have said that the families were alive and well, too, except I was duped like several times. Several times. You know, you had all these musicians with their names, and you think, oh, they're connected. They're connected, but no. Examples, just some examples. Childish Gambino. Not little known fact, neither a child nor a member of the Gambino family. Same with Irv Gotti and Yo Gotti, though at least one of them was an actual criminal, also a little known fact. Daz Dillinger, no relation to John. Beanie Siegel, not Bugsy's grandson, although they do bear a striking resemblance. Scarface, not the same guy. Neither was Noriega or Capone, not even Capone. Duped left and right. I felt super stupid, which is not usual for me, and don't test me. And that was just scratching the surface of the sack, I'm telling you. In fact, the only exception to not being duped or to being duped is Machine Gun Kelly, who is actually the original Prohibition gangster, and he's now 130 years old, and he looks it. No disrespect, not intended. But, all right, we're way off the path here. I had to get that off my chest. Let's not forget that the music that every single living person with the computer was making in the 2010s. In fact, I think that was part of the contract you signed when you bought a computer or an iPad or something. You said you have to make music and put it out. That's part of it. MP3s taught us music didn't need to sound good to be good. So people said, fuck it, started making music on the phones and the pads and the computers and just kind of shitting it out everywhere. And then you got, the music of the 2010s. And that had an effect on actual musicians, too. People like Kenny West, now known as G's. Bruno Willis Mars, San Martino or something. I don't think that's his real name. Lame Impala. And the next mega boy band, of course, the great One Dimension. R.I.P., Lame, Staley, Payne. Again, it would take women, again, because it does. Women like Beyond, the Queen, right? Arnold Palmer, or Lemonade, or whatever her thing was called. Alicia Keys, Lady Gaga, and young females like Kathy Perry, and Miley Ray Cyrus, Carly Rae Jepsen, Kelly Ray Clarkson, Lana Lang Del Rey, Ariana Del Grande, Adele Winehouse, Ed Sheeran, In the Pink, Alicia Moore Pink, and James Taylor Swift, who never went away. All these wonderful women to show people what real pop music with balls sounded like, except for Ed Sheeran. You weren't going to get the balls from Dumford & Sons or This Weekend or Robin Thicke or Michael Bublé or Post Malofis or Sean Sergio Mendes or Charlie or John Legend in his own mind or Ed Sheeran. But I got to give it, though. No disrespect. Really no disrespect. Larry Styles and Justin Bieber. Inspiration, by the way, for Ray Farlio and the Grease Beavers, but no relation, but certainly an inspiration. Other men would bring some of the balls in the form of hip-hop with people in the 2010s like Tyler the Maker, Travis Scott Barker, J. Crew, Burj Khalifa, Staffy. Sorry, Pitbull is not specifically a Staffy. He's just a general Pitbull. Lamar Kendricks, and Francis Drake, the two biggies. Not to mention female hip-hop stars bringing the T-Pain like Nicki Minaj à Trois, Megan the Equestrian, Carly B, and Iggy Azalea Banks, which of course brings us into the 2020s and about time. And women in hip-hop and the boop bleep and the countries like an STD and is all spreading, and you had more pop like Olivia Rodriguez and Billie Eilish and Tulips again, Dua, and again, of course, James Taylor Swift, because she knows the right people to pay to never go away. This is what happens. But I'm not going to get too much into the 2020s. I've decided to save this decade for a different episode. It's going to be a 6-hour episode, which I already fucking recorded, by the way, you assholes. And don't test me. Because the 2020s is the music I know the most about, hands down. All right. A spoiler alert, though, just to kind of get you, wet your whistle a little bit. Spoiler alert for this 6-hour episode. Tierra, Wax, Sizzler, and Fucker Twigs. But not as hard as Lamar Kendrick's whacked Francis Drake. Oh! And the Beatle brothers came back, but with a lot of missing letters. And now they're Korean, and I think they have an extra member or two. All right? And they were huge, huge. And that's all I'm saying about the 2020s. You want to hear more? You got to pay me and Nick over at Patreon. All right? Patreon.com, something. I'm not going to do that. I don't do that shit. So conclusions. Music is great. And don't test me. Well, you wanted more? You wanted more? I just talked for like almost a fucking hour. Jesus. So ungrateful. All right, this is the questions section, and here's how I work this. You got no questions for me. I got none for you. Agreed? And if anyone asks you anything, you stay silent. Thank you, you ungrateful fucks. And as always, as I say, starting right now, you can't have gratitude without attitude. That's why I hate all of you. Appreciate you for listening, though. Now pay me immediately. Now I'm going to explain to you why, as promised, cacio e pepe is the most complicated dish to make. So many ingredients. First, it's how you source the pepper. You want to make sure the peppercorns are exactly 6 millimeters in diameter. Bigger than usual, but that's what gives the pepe the punch, if you know what I'm saying. And you do, because I just fucking said it. Second is some people, they'll tell you the cheese is optional. It's not. All right? And I better not catch you saying that. That was my joke. That was my one joke, by the way, for this whole episode. But unlike most dishes I make, it does matter how much cheese you put on. Now, the only way to measure how much cheese to use is in cubits. All right? So take your arm and hold it out at 130 degrees. And then you take the